But now you don't need to shut it down. You don't. This is one of the coolest survival instincts. They all have their really neat aspects, every single one of them. If you can manage it, that's how you turn it into that superpower that will work for you, work harder and smarter for you, not against you. It's not something you need to be frustrated by. It's not something you need to get angry about. It's not something where you need to compare and contrast to other archetypes because you're not them. You don't react the way that they do to the same circumstances. That is not a choice. These things happen instinctively in nanoseconds, but you can learn to manage it so that it becomes something that serves you. You just need to know to learn when to listen to it and when to let that signal rest. Did you know there's a group of people who never felt like any of the 4 survival instinct archetypes fully fit them? That's right. I'm talking about fight, flight, freeze, fawn. We've all heard of these 4, and it feels like many of us fall into a dominant one for the majority of how we react when we're in situations that are high pressure, conflict, or just plain uncomfortable. But there is a group of people that don't feel like any of the 4 are a good fit. They thought maybe they had been doing it wrong, or maybe they were just a generic mix and couldn't quite get a handle on which one they identified with the most. But the truth is, they were scanning too soon for the quiz to catch up. Today, we are unveiling our 5th survival instinct archetype. The first one, the lion, is fight. The second, the deer, is flight. The third, the owl, is freeze. And the final one, as we all think we know, is the fox, fawn, or people-pleasing. But did you know there's a 5th? Well, many don't. And today, we are unveiling it just for you. Today, we name the 5th pattern, the panther. If you've ever felt like none of those really identify your survival reactions, if you felt like all of them identify your survival reactions, then you, my friend, might be a panther. And this episode is for you. Let's go. I'm Dr. Charlie Hornes. I'm a doctorate level, clinically trained and certified spiritual counselor and a master certified thought work strategist. I work with high functioning women who are tired of saying, I'm fine, when they know they're not. If you're exhausted from being the one who's holding it all together while quietly falling apart, this show is for you. Welcome to the Art of Managing Your Brain. Let's go. Hey, friend, welcome to the Art of Managing Your Brain podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Charlie Hornes. I'm a board-certified clinical strategist and licensed spiritual counseling provider. I'm also an executive systems advisor and coach. I'm a doctorate-level expert in leadership breakdown and institutional repair. Yeah, that's a mouthful, but what do I really do? Well, I help people stop dealing with nonsense and start living the life that they have always dreamed. Start running the businesses and the teams that they have always known they had the capacity to do. That's what we're up to over here. Today's episode is one we have been building towards since the beginning. Today, we are unveiling the 5th survival instinct archetype. We have the lion, which is fight, the deer, flight, the owl, freeze, and the fox, fawn. And for those that don't quite identify fawn, that's people pleasing. That's appeasing. That's saying yes when you want to say no. That's keeping everybody in the room happy. But not everybody identifies with these 4 archetypes. Some feel they're a little bit of all of them. Some feel like maybe they're not so much any. What if your nervous system didn't bolt, freeze, fawn, or fight? What if it forecasted? What if you saw the danger before it happened and the system punished you for being early? Let's talk about the seeker. Let's talk about the Panther instinct archetype. Let's talk about the system's most misunderstood survival strategy and why most have not even heard of it. That's why we're unveiling this today as our fifth and final survival instinct archetype. If you don't know yours yet, if you haven't taken our quiz, you need to go to charliehorniscoaching.com/quiz and find out exactly which archetype is your survival instinct and which one is the dominant reaction that's happening in your life, running your life, and making decisions for you in nanoseconds before you even know what's happening. This is 90% of the frustrations that people struggle with every single day. They wish they would say the thing and they don't. They wish they wouldn't say the thing and they do. They wish they could, get along like so-and-so or get out of that meeting quickly like so-and-so or clap back like so-and-so or stay so calm and reserved like so-and-so. But we don't see what each archetype does when they go home. Each one has its own shadow reaction. Each one ruminates. Each one has levels of regret or guilt or a case of the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. So in order for you to first identify what yours is, you need to go and take my quiz. It's a free quiz. It's about 60 seconds, unless you want to spend more time on it. charliehorniscoaching.com/quiz, because clarity starts with language. This will give it to you. All right, let's jump in and unpack why this fifth survival instinct archetype pattern gets missed. This archetype doesn't show up as loud, but that doesn't make it passive either. The Panther system, it's not confused. It's hyper calibrated. It's the kid who knew when their parent was about to lose it based on the way the car door closed. It's the manager who predicts burnout 6 months early by noticing one skipped meeting and one tone shift. It's a nervous system built to scan for micro threats before the room even realizes it's in trouble. Most systems don't teach people how to live with that kind of clarity without what looks like burnout. So they call it overthinking. They call it too sensitive. They say you need evidence, but they never tell you how to do any of that. But the Panther doesn't wait for evidence. The Panther notices before the fire even starts. Let's get clear on what this isn't. This isn't the owl, the freeze response, who pauses out of overload or out of absolute shutdown because they believe that they may very well be having a panic attack when they get sideswiped because they get fully amygdala hijacked. This isn't the deer, the flight response, who pulls back as quickly as possible for safety, who shuts it down, says thank you, and bolts. This isn't the fox, the fawn, or people-pleasing response, who morphs for connection, because the fox knows that unhappy people are not safe. And this isn't the lion, the fight response, who powers up to win no matter what. The Panther scans to stay ahead. It doesn't pull back. It zooms in. If you've ever said, I just know that something's off, and everybody else around you just told you to calm down, yeah, this one's for you. All right, I want to teach you a new term today. Today, we're going to talk about the salience network. So what does that mean? The brain's radar for threat, tone, and pattern shifts. That's what your salience network is. So what is that exactly? It's the part of your brain that notices when a smile doesn't match a voice or when the meeting feels off, even though no one has actually said anything specifically. Many people that will be identifying with this fifth archetype when they take the quiz are going to realize that what they have been convinced that is a level of cognitive dissonance where you feel something on the inside, but your outsides aren't matching. It's actually a surgically precise superpower. It's a feature developed by high alert environments, trauma repetition, or leadership pressure in systems that punish mistake making to the point that you're afraid to take a step without retribution. The brain adapts to predict danger before it's happened. That's not anxiety. That's intelligence that got hyper trained. I want to quickly share an illustration with you. I worked with a senior director client. She was high functioning, pattern mapping, full on Panther mode. She wasn't loud in meetings. She was reserved a bit. She didn't posture. She described it as being observant. She just liked to watch and see what was happening. And because of this pattern, if you will, she got flagged by her VP for not speaking up enough, right? But here's what nobody saw. And she shared this with me as it was happening. So I found it really interesting to watch it in real time. On her desk was a folder tracking the early signs of quiet quitting from her team, 6 months ahead of the company pulse surveys. People weren't leaving yet, but they were kind of mentally checked out. They were starting to, vanish. They were kind of just showing up and putting in the hours at their desk. Productivity on the team was dipping. Sick days were going up, but people were disheartened, disillusioned, and demoralized. And it was happening so slow that nobody saw it coming. She was seeing the disengagement trend in real time before it tipped over. And when 3 key members resigned within the same quarter, the company called it unexpected, but she didn't. She expected it. But she really wasn't in a position to do very much about it except try to encourage her coworkers and try to figure out what was going on. But that's Panther pattern, noticing the exit before the door even opens. Because Panthers aren't slow to speak, they're fast to notice. So I want to back up for just a minute and talk about how the Panther pattern got built and what to do with it now. So let's zoom in for a second on why this instinct actually exists, even when so many have never heard of it. If you're someone who picks up on micro changes before they escalate, there's a reason. Your nervous system got trained to scan early because waiting somewhere along the way cost you way too much. If you waited too long, the consequences were much greater. Maybe you learned that silence didn't mean safe. Maybe you tracked that voice tone, the energy shifts and tension before anything was ever said because someone had to. It's what kept you safe. Maybe it's what kept other people safe. Even if it wasn't a dangerous situation, you still had to potentially be dealing with maybe emotional dysregulation. Maybe you were a kid with emotionally dysregulated adults in the home. Maybe you are now an adult child of an alcoholic. Maybe you were just, in grade school with a bunch of jerks. You couldn't ever feel like you got it right. Maybe you became the one who held the whole temperature of the room while everyone else just ran around and reacted. That's not over analyzing. It's called adaptive intelligence. And in the brain, let's go back to that term that we talked about, salient network. It looks like a hyperactive system, the part that tags certain signals as important, especially when danger or loss or retribution or consequence is what's on the table. So if you're always scanning for the next move, the next shift, the thing nobody's yet said, but you know it's there, it's not some level of personality flaw. It's not that you've got it wrong because things don't seem to match how you feel. It's your system doing what it had to do to keep you safe, effective, efficient, and functioning in rooms where precision mattered for you to feel safe. But what's protected you all along, this entire time, regardless of how it came to be, it can start to exhaust you now if you don't put it on a schedule. Panther mode doesn't need to be turned off. It needs to be put to work. Then powered down. You got to take it for a walk. You need it scanning when it counts and resting when it doesn't. All right, let's jump into just a little bit of micro coaching when working with the Panther archetype. So let's look at the first step that we could do. This is not a level of fragility. This is not about being too sensitive, too emotional, too dramatic. None of that. Because you were trained by high pressure, low predictability systems where the early signal was the only protection that you had. Is that something you're aware of? That's something that you probably need to outwardly process, write about, free associate, create a voice memo, talk it out with somebody, or it could just be the dominant survival instinct disposition that you have. But now you don't need to shut it down. You don't. This is one of the coolest survival instincts. They all have their really neat aspects, every single one of them. If you can manage it, that's how you turn it into that superpower that will work for you, work harder and smarter for you, not against you. It's not something you need to be frustrated by. It's not something you need to get angry about. It's not something where you need to compare and contrast to other archetypes because you're not them. You don't react the way that they do to the same circumstances. That is not a choice. These things happen instinctively in nanoseconds, but you can learn to manage it so that it becomes something that serves you. You just need to know to learn when to listen to it and when to let that signal rest. So let's now talk really quickly about what's actually happening in your brain. You see, the seeker archetype is built on a vigilant pattern recognition. So here's what's happening neurologically. Your amygdala, that small survival mechanism about the size of an almond, buried deep into your brain, and I talk about this a lot, your amygdala is on quiet alert, constantly scanning for shifts in the tone, in space, in posture, in threat, in safety. Your hippocampus is replaying old cues from past harms, reminding you what happened when you spoke too soon, too clearly, too powerfully. Your prefrontal cortex is overanalyzing consequences before you act. It's playing out scenario that hasn't even happened yet. You're basically spending lots of your energy concerned about things that aren't real, as in they're not happening yet, but they could be, and you know it. It's not a manifestation of what ifs. It is, you see the forest for the trees. You see it. You see what's coming. You know. The question is, when will you act? But your body, she's exhausted. She's still holding power she was never allowed to ever use. Because when you make the call too early and then you care what people think about it, it can be devastating. And that's the setup. So what do you do now? Here's how to interrupt the seeker cycle and bring your panther back into alignment with what is going to feel much more comfortable to you, and not in a way where you're not interested in discomfort, because discomfort is actually what ultimately spurs growth. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about when your insides don't match your outsides, right? So we name that scan when you feel the urge to scan and watch the room, and ask yourself why you're tracking. What is it that your system still thinks is unsafe to speak? What does your panther think is unsafe to address? And then ask, which pattern am I watching for? Is there a threat that's here, or maybe is it historical? Is it something that reminds you from your past? Are you projecting outward things that you've seen patterns for in the past that you know probably will have the same outcome? That's very different than catastrophic thinking, which can be manifestations of worry, but that there's really potentially not the actual converging forces of that outcome. We're talking about things you know can be very high percentages of happening, and you see them coming and they're glowing green. That's your first disruption. We have to start to see, is it a real threat coming down the pike, or is it a historical threat that you're just feeling some reverberations from, if you will? And is there a small move I can make now instead of waiting? Just like in my illustration with my client, she noticed, she saw, she tracked, she found lots of pieces of data interesting as she did her job, but she kept waiting rather than allowing anyone who could have intervened initially to do anything about it, because she wasn't sure that what she thought was happening was real. If it's helpful to your team, if it's helpful to your family, if you see something, you need to start addressing it beforehand. This is how you take your panther for a walk. Then we can take a next step. Write it, say it, not to convince anybody, just to claim it as your own. Because like I said, you don't need other people to agree with you. You don't need somebody else to corroborate you, especially if we're talking about the gender bias gap and the gender double bind women struggle with every day out in the world and at the holiday dinner table, where men feel like they need women to be corroborated by another man in order for whatever the data set is that they're presenting to be taken seriously. You don't need that. It doesn't matter to you. You can feel what you feel and trust what you're intuiting. Trust what your panther is already telling you is happening, even if nobody else in the room can see it. You can practice that premature clarity before you feel ready, when you're able to just simply say what you see, not in the room. Say it to yourself. Just say what you see. Say what you feel, and do that however you need to. That's a, write it down situation. That's a speak it out loud. That's a talk to somebody about it. But what you do when you name that, you teach your body that this level of speaking truth, your truth, is not dangerous. It's directional. And you're not in any kind of level of danger when you start to see whether a pattern you're dealing with is on the horizon, or is it that reverberation of historical patterns that you have lived through? And then the next thing would be to audit the silence, track where you're being silent the most. Because even if you have helpful information for other people, often your Panther has been trained to tamp it down, to keep it close, because you're looking for retribution, consequence, reprimand, things getting complicated, things getting hectic, chaos, the whole eggshell situation. And so your Panther is used to kind of silent slinking, right? Like sculpting its way through the underbrush, blending in with the dark of night as it's looking for threat and levels of unsafe situations. What could that be? We're not in physical danger, right? But we're talking about leadership meetings, relationship conflict, family conflict, group settings, interpersonal relationships that aren't going well. You can start to pick up on those sort of vibrations in the room when there's some like dysfunction raising its ugly head, right? And then ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I name this out loud? If somebody hears you say it, if you say it to somebody who might have some level of ability to intervene, if you see a problem on the horizon. You see, this is your survival script. And that's what we're rewiring and rewriting. Because the seeker doesn't need to slink off, to vanish, to disappear, to stay up in the tree branches, scanning for threat, constantly worried about being unsafe because of all of the different twig snaps and, creepy noises. And because you've been there before and there's danger lurking out there, you don't need to disappear and hide and look for threat. You need to channel this because it is your superpower. Your Panther's not your weakness. Your Panther is your precision system that has helped you survive until now. But at this point, today, as you learn, she can now become your superpower if you learn to act before the room gives you permission. If you learn to take one micro action that might help to solve a problem, prevent a problem, at least make somebody aware of a problem, set a boundary if you're in a walking on eggshells situation, leave if you need to, don't stay if you're feeling discomfort and you're being gaslit and told that you're too sensitive. You don't need to stay there. Trust what you're feeling when it comes to this level of instinct, right? Because it's your instinct telling you you're not in a safe environment. And if you learn to act before the room gives you permission, you can save yourself and sometimes other people a lot of heartache. And you can begin to train people that your Panther feels are unsafe, how to safely treat you. And what is this? This is leadership. It's not paranoia. It's not catastrophic thinking. The Panther sees details. Others don't, because she learned she had to. Trust when your Panther is telling you to pay attention to something. Then kickstart your thinking brain and determine for yourself if it seems like a valid thing to pay attention to. Then, when you get home, you need to reset. And here's just a quick mantra and a micro action. Tell yourself, I don't need to wait for chaos to act, because you don't. You may see things that other people are missing entirely. You may be able to step in and be helpful. You may be able to determine that it's not something you need to engage in. You get to determine for yourself what is important, what you are scanning for, and you get to begin to filter that instead of spending all day, every day trying to figure out exactly which reaction you should be embodying in the moment. The truth is, you're just constantly looking for the threat that your panther knows is lurking. What is it? Identify it. Figure out exactly, if there's something that's happening in your working environment, if there's a person, you can't quite pin down the comment, you can't quite identify what the tension is, what the passive aggressiveness is, what the snarkiness is. Just identify it without saying there's something wrong with you, without saying you've done something to deserve whatever. Without saying, maybe you're overreacting or maybe you're being too sensitive. Just identify what the thing is that is causing your sympathetic nervous system to go in overdrive. You don't need your nervous system constantly online. That's why you don't need to wait for the chaos, because number one, that stretches this out way longer than it needs to. And number two, then you're dealing with the stress of the chaos itself. If there's something you can identify intentionally early on when you feel this level of intuition, your panther is actually just like pawing at you, telling you something's up. If there's something you can do to soothe yourself, whether that's an action to take or one to avoid, give it some thought and determine if that's something that would bring you peace. And then track one early warning signal this week and tell somebody. Say it out loud and make it count. Still haven't taken our quiz? Just run to charliehornetscoaching.com/quiz and find out what your survival instinct archetype is. Are you a lion, a deer, an owl, or a fox? Or are you a panther? Do you want the full Panther Toolkit? Then go to charliehornetscoaching.com/panther/seeker. And there, once you click the link, and you can grab that link below, you will get 15 minutes for a very special offer of an interactive toolkit just for the Panther. And it is $9.97 right now, just for you. Typically, I sell these for $19.97 as interactive guide, but run to that website. And as soon as you click on it, you've got 15 minutes for a special $9.97 offer. So just go to charliehornetscoaching.com/panther/seeker and grab that interactive special offer right now. And if you want a full system, we have the multi-archetype survival kits. These include the Burnout Equation Masterclass and a full diagnostic map, or you can find more information at charliehornetscoaching.com/store. That's where all of our resources can be found. So we have all kinds of different customized digital self-coaching resources and material so that you can start to learn at your own pace how to do this stuff for yourself. So you don't have to rely on people like me or anybody else or pay for, way too many classes and this, that, and the other. I want to teach you how to do this one time, give you the material so that you can continue to look back and practice, and then self-coach. Get out there and start taking that life that you've always imagined, that life of your dreams. You can do that once you start to manage your survival instinct archetype. So run to charliehornetscoaching.com/store if you want to see all of the different available resources and kits and courses. There's all kinds of stuff there that is specifically tailored to your personal archetype. And my Panthers, it's /Panther/seeker. Go get that interactive toolkit as soon as you can while this special offer is available to you. I want you to ask yourself now, as a little bit of a bonus coaching prompt, what would change if you trusted your first read on a situation instead of waiting for approval? That's your real work. What would change if you trusted your first read instead of waiting for all of that other nonsense? And here's my final thought. We're not here to fix anything. Your Panther is so perfect, gorgeous, smart, super sleek, super fabulous, and absolutely stunning. This is about naming what was already happening and just giving it some structure. Because if this feels like it's fitting for you, if you feel like your insides don't match your outsides, if you feel like you know something's going on, but you can't quite get the words for it, you can't get your finger on it, everything feels like gray and icky and you're not sure, but you have a feeling, you see, that is actually the reaction. That is the strategy. That is what we need to give structure to so that you trust it. You don't kick yourself. You don't live in self-doubt and second guessing, and you don't chase the corroboration and approval of other people for what you already know is true. And you've spent a long time tracking what other people have missed, and you've done it unconsciously. This is truly your survival instinct mechanism constantly at work. And these things can be rewired when you learn to manage your brain, which is the stuff that I teach. Often, if you're waiting too long, if you're waiting for comfort, you're going to wait past the point where things can happen to change behavior, to intervene on stuff before it blows up, because you see that coming when nobody else does. And you don't need them to tell you that you're right. You need to start to build the muscle to trust that you are right, because 99.9% of the time, you probably are. All right, friend, if this episode hit something real for you, we hope that you will like, you will subscribe, you'll comment, you will drop some Panther emojis, drop some fire in the comments. And if you've taken the quiz, let us know if this is your result, because we would love to see as many Panthers out there as we can find, because I know there are so many more of you out there that have been looking for the language to identify exactly what your reactions are. So, give us a like, subscribe, share, and give us some engagement and comments down below. We would really appreciate it. And don't forget, when you take the quiz, get your results, you should have gotten a downloaded free cheat sheet in your inbox. And also, don't forget about the link below where you can grab your Panther Survival Instinct Toolkit for just $9.97, which I usually have on my website for $19.97. So this is part of the bigger playbook prevention offering that we have on the site. And you can find all of that at charliehornetscoaching.com/store. So it is time to turn your clarity back on, because your seeker was never lost. It's not wandering. She's just waiting for confirmation. Well, my friend, this is it. All right, coming up next week, we're shifting into real world diagnostics tools. Now that we've closed our series on the 5 survival instinct archetypes, I'm so excited to have unveiled this 5th as a survival instinct that we don't hear a lot about. So hopefully this gives some new language to people that may not have entirely identified with the first 4, or identified more with more than one than others. So we are shifting into real world diagnostic tools now. How to tell the difference between burnout and the misdiagnosis of what many actually think is burnout, but it's not. And why most high functioning women and high achievers are misreading their own signals. Because my friend, so often people think what's happening is burnout. And I promise you, it's not. I hope you'll join us next week when we dive into that. So don't miss it. Subscribe, share, and keep those brain conversations sharp. Have an amazing week, and I'll see you then.